Do you believe in the devil, Father? I'm Daredevil. Do you believe in the devil, Father? I don't get to choose who I am. My delusion was thinking God had anything to do with it. I'm Daredevil. 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 Not even God can stop that now.
Welcome one and all back to the pot washing section of Hell's Kitchen. That is the Daredevil cast. We're here to talk about that horny bastard, Matt Murdock, the man without fear, aka Daredevil, in the lead up to his Disney Plus standalone MCU reboot debut, Daredevil Born Again. My name's Nick Standiforth, and I'm here with
Eammon Jacobs. How are you doing?
I'm bloody brilliant, mate. Did you like my intro?
That was a very good intro. It was solid. It was funny. It was great.
Thank you.
Less wooden than mine last week.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Wood's good. Wood's good. You can use it as in stick form to pummel criminals' faces in, which we will be discussing at length this week because we are breaking down the bone-breaking, club-swinging first season of Netflix's Daredevil. And who boy? Drew Goddard. He's a clever sausage, isn't he?
He's a good egg. I mean,
he's a good egg.
He's got a pretty varied, filmography. I mean, Cloverfield, for me, I'm like, how have you gone from Cloverfield to Daredevil? That is a stretch. It's great. So, yeah, I'm excited to dig into this one. Cause...
Absolutely. I didn't realise, sticking with Drew Goddard a bit, have you seen what he's doing recently?
No.
On Disney Plus. So he's doing the new Netflix, blah, 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 the Netflix, not Netflix, I've said it twice now, the new Disney Plus series, High Potential it's called.
I've seen it advertised. It does look good.
Yes. Yeah. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about blind people beating people up. Yeah. Eammon, can I cast your mind back to many moons ago? 2015. Charlie Cox rocks up on the scene, hitting a cane, going, "Oh, Matt Murdock, I can't see anything. Oh, what am I like? I can't see anything." But it's not true. It's not true, Eammon. Because weirdly, chemicals fucked his eyes up, and now he can fuck people up on a daily basis. Yeah, I've been rewatching Daredevil. I can agree, it still absolutely slaps. Do you concur?
I concur that it absolutely slaps fools in the face, both metaphorically and literally in the streets of New York City.
Yeah.
Good God, it's just fucking brilliant, isn't it? I have managed to do a whole season rewatch in like less than a week to prepare for this gloriously bloody show. And just, I thought, I did wonder whether we'd bitten off more than we could chew trying to like do a full rewatch. We absolutely have. And within an episode, I was like, no, this is exactly what I needed to do. Like, I'm so in for this. Like, it didn't feel like I was rewatching a show that I've loved for years. This felt like starting the show completely with like a fresh perspective. It was just brilliant.
Might you say you seeing showing a completely different like viewpoint, like a different way to everyone else?
Like a world on fire.
Like a world on fire. But what's funny, mate, is every time I heard that, whenever he says like a world on fire, I go, how about yours? That's the way I like it, and I never get bored. Hey now, you're an all-star. And the fact that no one's done an all-star like music video to Daredevil is really upsetting. I'll be deadly honest, I've got one episode to go. Okay. Right? But I've hammered it because we did talk the other day, and I was like, mate, are you struggling to like watch the telly? Because we're very spoiled bastards, and the job that we've got, we get sent a lot of shit, and like in between my actual work, I've been like, fuck, I've got to put like 3 episodes of Daredevil in between this. I'm gonna manage. And like you've said, mate, it's easy viewing. It is easy viewing because it's so fucking good, and it's still good, and. You know, we talked about this before we even started the podcast about like little sort of discoveries and like almost like revelations of leading up to this of like, even though given how old it is, like it's going on it's a decade old now. We are 10 years since this show started. And what I said to you is I didn't consider then, but I do consider now is it is really when you nail it down, it is what every show and every superhero franchise should be aiming for, in that it had stuff to go off with. It had a reputation to repair with following Ben Affleck's thing, and it also had to somehow run adjacent to, but be harder than the MCU universe that it was, but wasn't connected to. And it's so brutal. It's like relentlessly brutal. Like last night, I was watching the Nelson v Murdoch episode where Foggy's found out, and like he wakes up and he pulls his quilt down and he just looks like a patchwork quilt because he's just stitched up to fuck because his nurse friend's been over and helped him out. Hashtag bring back Rosario Dawson. Are we still doing hashtags now as a generation? I'm not sure.
Showing our age there a little bit.
I know. I don't give a shit. Anything to get Rosario Dawson back, basically. But yeah, I think like you've said, it was easy. It's been easy viewing and stuff, but I think I saw it in a brand new light in terms of looking to what the superhero genre looks like now and how much this clearly had an impact in it.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
I agree, especially when you look at something like The Penguin, for example, which is, just a straight crime drama that happens to take place in Gotham City. This is arguably the blueprint for that, because it is a crime drama in New York, and there happens to be a vigilante on the streets, and there may or may not be men in iron suits and gods with hammers, as Leland puts it so delicately, flying around the city. But it never tries to up the scope in any way. It's always that sort of down, dirty and gritty. We are street level, practically in the sewers. I think it's it's been the blueprint for certain things going forward. Penguin being the most recent example, but it also tries to set up its own little corner of the MCU, which again, in hindsight, there's so many little Easter eggs and references that at the time you're just like, oh, that's cool, but they've managed to pay it off.
In what examples do you think, or do you prefer sort of thing?
Well, the initial one that stuck out to me is when when Foggy and Matt are drunk, and Foggy suggests that Matt has had a relationship with a Greek girl.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, it didn't end very well. And he's like, oh, they never do. And that's it. It's not. And her name was Electra Nachios.
Yeah.
It's just stuff like that. There's a reference around the 8th episode, I believe, when a senator says to Fisk, hey, you should run for office. And he's like, oh, I won't be very good at it. And at the time, they probably didn't think, oh, we're going to get a chance to pay this off further down the line. And now, literally a decade later, that Easter egg actually works in a really strange full circle kind of way. It's stuff like that. That I'm just like, this is a really rewarding sort of watch now.
Absolutely. I think what's interesting about that though is that that says a lot, and that is that's the brilliant thing about comic book shows or films as a whole, is I can see why you thought that, but at the same time, I take that again. I like, it's weird that you make comparisons to the Penguin and stuff, because there's so much I want to talk to you about Kingpin specifically. Both really good, and I'll be honest, there's some moments where I'm going, has that aged well? In terms of, like you're saying, have you ever thought like politics and stuff, or the fact that there's the flashback to his dad, and his dad was running for what is it that he's trying to do? I can't remember now.
I believe it's mayor.
Is it mayor? I think so. It's something. Yeah, it's something. Or he wants to be on the council for like the district or something. I think that's it. Sorry. But like, it's funny that you took away, oh, that's an Easter egg for like potentially Born Again, and I've gone, no, I take that as, no, I don't want to be like my dad.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's really, but isn't that mad that we've both watched again? We've watched it, and I've gone, no, I saw it totally different. I understand what you're saying, but like, but yeah, there's just so many details that I rewatched, and that's the great thing about any show or film, is that if you continue to, no matter how many times you rewatch something, you will continue to see something different. There are so many moments in this rewatch where I've gone, like you're talking about Easter eggs, about mentioning Elektra and stuff like that. I've watched scenes and I've gone, wow, this is your warm up to what you will eventually become. You will do next season. Not just, and I'm not talking about like winks to the audience. I mean, wow, this is your audition for another altercation that you will have. So we're gonna like jump around probably inevitably during this podcast, but like there's one moment. I'm trying to remember. So it's episode 6 when. Condemned, where Matt's trying to get Vasily out the... Is it... No, it's not Vasily, it's Vladimir, sorry. He's trying to get Vladimir out the building. And that conversation, he's got him tied up, and I was like, this is Frank Castle. This is Frank and Matt, like, in the next season, where he's, horrible conversations are being had, and he's like, you are going to be me, like, you need to do the shit I need to do. And it's like, wow, this is your warm. This is an interrogation that you are prepping for, and you don't even realize. Yeah. Like it was so many moments where I was like, not only is it amazing that I can see what's coming, but it's impressive for a show that it is almost just like all the Netflix shows. They are like the bastard cousins of the MCU, and they became even more so as it progressed. Where it was like, we're going to slowly lean away from what this is. And it's like, oh, why though? Why did you do that?
Again, we will get to that in future episodes, because I think it does sort of, it tries to achieve too much towards, the defenders. But at the start, you have this, I think what's impressive is that they managed to get this off the ground and approved by Netflix and Marvel TV in the first place, because even though it's a small scale story compared to something like the Avengers, it's still ambitious, and it's still
massively,
by, for example, even just the choice to not just on a story level pull from Frank Miller, but on a visual level to keep him in the black suit for about 98% of the show or the season. You are essentially taking away one of the most recognizable aspects of the character to a wider audience. And they've gone, well, no, we need to build him from the ground up. And from the ground up, he's just a guy in, like, essentially gym wear.
Yeah.
So again, it just... that was something to me that I'd kind of forgotten how late in the game they introduced the costume. And you're just like, wow. And they still managed to make it so entertaining and engaging without needing to be like, right, mid-season's hit, give him the comic accurate suit.
Well, this is an interesting point that you brought up, right? Because we spoke last week about how initially the first attempt at Daredevil Born Again was people were kicking off at the idea that he's not going to be wearing a suit for 6 episodes. I'm like, he wasn't wearing horns for like you've said, like, what is it, 13 episodes?
It's
and what
12 episodes and 3/4, if you want
to... So it's like, in my head, I was like, that's been done. That we were fine with that, because, for one, we've talked about it last week, Charlie Cox is Daredevil. Yeah. Like, it is bonkers how good he is in this performance. And, like, for a guy who, prior to this, he was in The Odd Thing, he was in, I always remember seeing him in Stardust. That was, like, my thing that, like, I was like, wow, who's this dude? And then the odd appearance here and there, and then he turns up in Daredevil, and it's just perfect. Like, everything about him, like, he's charming, he's torn every episode, physically, mentally, like, and I know it's a weird thing to sort of laugh about, but like, I remember him talking about, I think when he auditioned, was it either Star Wars or The Hobbit? It was something massive. And he was saying, like, during the audition, they were like, dude, what are you doing with your eyes? Because he was in Matt mode. He was like, his eyes were like moving around, and they were like, what the fuck is he doing? But it's just fucking brilliant, man. And it's like so character driven, for one. And like you were talking about how, you've already said this week and last week about street level is so key to this story, and like how you've always been drawn to Daredevil because of it's so human. It's so like, these are flawed people that aren't, he's got powers, quote, but they're not, they're not he's not a super soldier. He's not invulnerable. Like like there are so many visuals throughout this show, like I'm talking about earlier, when he pulls the quilt down when Foggy discovers him and he's fucked up. But one thing, I don't know why, there are so many little moments that are so visceral that you're like, oh god, that looks horrible. And it's not
the prosthetics.
It's not necessarily him. Not just prosthetics, mate, but there's like, so the episode before no, it's the episode Foggy does find out. But when he kills Nobu and Fisk turns up and he's like, cheers pal, you've done me a favour, and Fisk proceeds to beat the living shit out of him, but he throws him on the table, and like you've said, his sports gears, or he's got like the really thin bit of red streaks, and a really diehard fan would go, oh, that's a warm-up to the costume. I'm like, no, it's not, he's literally just bought that off the rack. But he like rolls over the blueprints. All the blueprints are stuck to his back, and I was just like, this is horrible, this is so icky. It's like as anyone that knows Eammon knows, he's an avid horror fan. The amount of times if he watches a certain film and he'll go like Hellraiser, Evil Dead, I'm like, sticky films they're very sticky films. Daredevil is a sticky show. It's very sticky.
It's very sticky. It's very gloopy in places. Mainly to do with Matt, unfortunately. He's quite often
dude gets the shit kicked regularly.
Gets the shit kicked out of him regularly. He's always having his like wounds like sewn up, usually by Claire. It's just gross. I mean, all right, I feel like we're jumping around a little bit, so maybe we should, roll things to the start of the season.
We should.
We'll then move towards the middle, and then obviously, culminate in the end, and then we'll figure out our heaven and hell section later down the line.
Yes, absolutely. So starting off from the beginning, one thing that I want to highlight, and I think is brilliant about this, is how long it takes for Fisk to even get on the radar of Matt.
I'm pretty sure Fisk doesn't show up for at least 4 episodes, I believe, but there's like a handful of references throughout the sort of opening of just my employer or the guy or the man. Do you know what I mean? And it's just, again, I think this is the wonderful thing about this show, is that it doesn't go, we've teased it for an episode, we'll just give you it. It makes you wait, and it's like, even though realistically as a fan you're like, oh well, it's obviously going to be Kingpin, it makes him a more terrifying entity in New York because you don't see him, because he is working behind the shadows. And it's just like, it's such a good way of building up a villain, to be like, we don't need to bring him in straight away because we know that he's an absolute presence in the criminal underworld. Like, and kudos to I've forgotten the guy's name, but the guy who plays Wesley, because he's menacing enough when he wants to be.
Yes, he is. There's quite a few. When we get to the heaven and hell section, I want to sort of after that talk about the sort of MVPs of this show, because like you've said, it really does highlight it, how many different characters fortify this show just by being little nuggets. But yeah, he's the Kobayashi of like the usual suspects.
yeah.
Like Kingpin is Kaiser Soze. Like for 4 episodes, this myth is built up, like of this guy, and like Eammon loves talking about it when the bowling alley bloke just like is like, no, you don't realise what's happened now. Like, I've said his name. Like, you're a fucking coward. You're like, hello fence,
and proceeds to shove his own face through a spike.
Yeah.
Which again just builds up, like you say, the myth around this person. Why is this person so terrifying that somebody is willing to shove their own eyeball through a fence and commit suicide because he said his name? It's not like he's betrayed him. It's not like he's done some deal. All he's done is said his name, and that in itself has like literally put the fear of God in him. I just think that it's such a good way of, it's world building, it's plot development in a really sort of, this is going to sound contradictory, subtle way.
No, you're right.
And I just keep coming back to the fact that it's such a great way to start a show.
Well, like I say, it does. It reminded me. The two things I wrote down, right, were, and they couldn't be sort of higher sort of comparisons in terms of respect for the show. Is one was The Usual Suspects, because he's like street level Thanos, but he's also Kaiser Soze. And going back to, like we've spoken about, how the delay in revealing him, it reminded me a lot of The Wire, in the sense that there's one thing I always loved about that show, particularly in the first season, is the police are trying to catch Avon Barksdale, and they don't actually see him till game day, which is like the 6th or 7th episode of that show. And you've been following him for fuck knows how long, and they've never crossed paths. But like, you know, like you've said, it drip feeds at you. Like this show drip feeds you all the moments that you want of, you know, just like you said, sort of building this myth behind this man, that when he turns up, you're like, oh fuck. And my only issue I've got, and we will talk about it in the Heaven and Hell section, I just feel there are some inconsistencies with Kingpin, which I will talk about, and I'll be interested to see what your thoughts are. But yeah, like the first sort of third of it, I love the relation. I don't care what anyone says about. I don't understand why, like, Foggy Nelson gets so much shit. I think he's perfect. I think he's probably one of the most comic fucking accurate characters in a show ever, because he's annoying as fuck. He's always chipper. Like, he's always, you know, let's do things by the book, and he's like, sound, you do that, I'm nipping out, I might be back tomorrow, don't check my face, whatever you do. And it's just their chemistry is essential. Tony needs Happy, Bucky needs Steve, Matt needs Foggy, and they are so good together. I just think it's bonkers that people think he's shit, because, like, I've always loved Eldon Henson. He's always a real. Have you ever seen The Mighty?
I have, yes.
What a film! And I'm just like, you're really good in The Mighty. You're really good in this. But yeah, sorry, dude, I'm just taking over this.
No, it's fine. I could not agree more. You know, Eldon Henson's performance. Although, you know, Matt is obviously the driving force of the show, and he is a very introspective, soulful person. He's constantly torn. He's talking through his emotions all the time. But Foggy is the heart of this show, for the reasons that you've just said. He's always chipper. He's always, you know, upbeat for the most part. He's always got a joke to whip out if they're having a bad day or whatever. You know, even something like the fact that he knows deep down that him and Karen are never going to be a thing.
Yeah.
He still gets the most out of their relationship because they build a friendship. And it's just, and he's never like, oh yeah, she fancies Matt, obviously, so I'm just going to be like depressed about it.
Yeah.
He's just like, that's fine, I've got a new mate, like, grand.
Yeah.
He's lovable.
He's mayor of the friend zone, and he's all right about it.
He is. But that is not to say that Foggy doesn't have game, because Foggy absolutely has game, as seen because he has a on and off situationship with Marcy at Landon and Zach, and I'm just like, Foggy Nelson, man, like, what a guy.
Like, Foggy now.
Hey, one sec. Foggy, I'll see you tomorrow.
It's a girl, isn't it? You got a new phone just for your girls. My life sucks.
Get home safe.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Those three together, like, Deborah Anwell's like, she's like, again, like, all these people, it's like no one else could do this. I can't imagine anyone else to do this, and I love them all. I think you're all sound. Like, I want to go to the bar. I want to go out for a drink with you.
I want to go to Josie's.
One thing that really, yeah, exactly. I'd be like, Josie, just give an extra bottle. Stop moaning. One thing that does annoy me though, and I did write down in the notes, bar hopping. Where the fuck is your money coming from?
That is one thing that I do consistently throughout. Think, how the fuck are you affording anything? Because they constantly make reference to the fact that they don't really have any clients. Their office, she's not getting paid, or at least not to start with. They've got like next to no office furniture. They've still got bills to pay, and yet they get absolutely shit-faced, I want to say, at least 4 times throughout the season. And it always looks like a great night, by the way.
They always end up stumbling home.
Yeah.
I think I was telling Eammon the other day, right? I've got a new local near me, lovely place, and I've got a decent rapport with the staff. I couldn't say to them, "Can I just nick a bottle behind the bar and just get through this? If that's all right.
Yeah.
I'll never pay you back. I'll pay you back in whippy repartee, but like that's all I've got at the moment. I just think I remember like second episode, bar hopping. Where the fuck is your money coming from? Like
how is Foggy
confusing.
affording to buy Brett's mum cigars to bribe him with? Because he's buying them on the reg, man. Like Foggy, I think, has got some money stashed away for a rainy day because like. They can afford to do a lot of shit that realistically they shouldn't be able to do in New York because New York is spinning. But maybe we're getting too in the weeds with that.
No, absolutely not, mate. Because like he's like, oh come on, your mum will outlive both of us. I'm like, mate, she'll outlive your fucking bank account. Like what's? And that's not hard. But yeah, just one thing that I just thought, that's interesting. But what getting into it? Where are we going? I'm looking. I showed Eammon earlier. I got notes for days, folks. I've been that lady in the corner of the courtroom typing up. One thing we must address, which is always great to see, and it's one thing that Matt has that I don't think any hero in the MCU or the DC for that matter has, which is Matt's daytime side hustle, which is so enjoyable to watch. That Matt in the courtroom is as good as Daredevil punching people. Like it's just, and you know, I like we've said last week, I'm a bit of a novice in compared to the comics as Eammon is, but like one thing they nail perfectly is Charlie Cox nails perfectly is Matt in the courtroom, just absolutely wrecking fools. Yeah. All right, he's got an inbuilt like lie detector, but he's just lovely. I'm just a sucker for a courtroom drama. So like seeing it in a superhero film, I'm like, oh fucking hell, yes, please. I
mean, episode 3 for me gets that perfectly. Yeah, it's when he's defending Healy, who is the guy that shoves his face through the frame thing. And he has that moment where he addresses the jury, and he's listening to their heartbeats, and they're all sat there like, "Mate, what are you doing?" And he's like, I'm just taking in the moment, and you're just like, come on, dude. Like, it's so good.
It's very good.
It's perfect.
But that's the thing of like, you know, Tony Stark fixing stuff is boring. Like who else we got? I don't know.
Steve Rogers
is boring.
Steve Rogers going to the gym is boring.
Yeah, like this is a guy that like he literally needs one to work the other.
Yeah.
And I think, as much as we've talked about, you know, other shows and other films need to take note, I think this show does that so well of the double identity thing of like one feeds the other, and if anything, like that's why it'd be great if, you know, for say James Gunn's Superman, if you saw Clark Kent actually doing some reporting, if you saw, you know, for the next Bruce Wayne or for Matt Reeves' next Batman film, if you saw Bruce handling Wayne Industries? Wayne? What am I saying? Wayne Enterprises.
Yeah.
Wayne Enterprises? Yeah. It just people doing normal stuff.
People doing normal, relatable things, because then that makes you care about a character more. And I think the thing with Daredevil is that, like, yes, like for example, Bruce Wayne, sure, he handles the company and the money feeds the bat and all that, but in his day job, typically speaking anyway, he's not working to the same ends. Like his day job is keeping up appearances. For Matt Murdock, his day job is like, well, I need to do the stuff to put that guy away that I need to do at night, so I need to make everything work in tandem together. It's like he might not be Daredevil in the daytime, but he's still doing the same fucking job.
Yeah,
he's still working to put the bad guys away
constantly.
Yeah. And I love how they depict it in this, because it's like you can almost see that he's got more of an investment in the courtroom, at least in this season, compared to like Foggy, for example. Not that Foggy does a bad job in the courtroom from the sort of few little bits that we get, but you can just see that Matt is like on edge of like, well, I need to do this so that I can at least sort of, you know, justify what I'm doing in the evening, and it helps. So Yeah.
Yeah, that and I think, speaking of Foggy as well, there was one thing that I was ever slightly annoyed about, and it's nothing wrong with this season. For some reason, I had, it's not spoilers because fucking hell, guys, it's been out forever. But like in the second season, when Foggy has that sort of showdown with those two gangbangers in the hospital, and I thought that was in this season.
I did. I was waiting for it.
And I was really annoyed when it wasn't. Yeah. When he goes to the hospital and sees Claire, I was like, oh my God, that's this episode. I was like, no, it's not. Fuming.
I know. But yeah. Next episode we can talk about
that. Yeah, but it makes up for it. Like it's there's good stuff in it.
Yeah.
What else I want to talk about? So mid-season.
I tell you who is a fun little player that I really enjoy all the way throughout. I think all of the Netflix shows actually is Turk Barrett. I just want to give a little shout out to Turk Barrett.
Mate.
What a guy. There is a great moment in the first episode. No, it is the third episode again, where he's got Healy, again the assassin, is talking about the gun, and he pulls the gun out and he goes to shoot the guy in the bowling alley, and then it cuts back to Turk Barrett selling him the gun like, it's never gonna jam, mate. This is a brand new gun, like it's perfectly clean, it's untraceable.
No chance of jamming up.
Man, look at this. This is top of the line. I guarantee this baby will not jam. Or my name ain't Turk Barrett.
That's such a good way of just like building up the weird little Turk Barrett mythology of the MCU. It's so good. He's a little bit of a hustler. He's a little bit of a, wheeler dealer.
Well, it's not even that. It's almost like Guy Ritchie like.
Yeah.
Where it's Tommy. It's like Turkish telling Tommy, like, if you try shooting, and he's like, if it doesn't work, you can always hit him with it. Like, it's that, and it's exactly what you said. And the show does it so many times of like 2 days earlier, 24 hours earlier. Like, Matt's fight with Nobu flashes all the way back, and it's like, and it's horrific. But like, the flashbacks are brilliant. The cast, like, even like we've said about talking about the smaller characters, like Matt's dad, amazing. Like, those father-son moments are so good. Like, it's so... and you forget that, young Matt Murdock is the son from Ozark. Eventually becomes the son from Ozark. But yeah, there's just little moments in it where and it's weird. I kept thinking about what you said last week about how Daredevil is so human, in not just with Matt, but just everyone around him.
Yeah.
And one thing that stood out for me is the episode where I forgot her name. Who's the lady that feeds him in food, pays him in food, who owns the Mrs.
Cardenas.
Cardenas, yeah. When she dies, stood round. They're in the she's in the morgue, and Karen's like she didn't have any family. Like, did she have any family? And they're like, no, she didn't have anyone. It immediately, and I was like, this is a weird comparison, but it's bonkers that I'm more bothered about this, is when Natasha dies in Endgame. And they're all like, did she have any family? And they're like, yeah, we were a family. And you're like, it's not the same. And I've followed this woman for fucking 7 films or whatever. Yeah. And then this old lady's died. Mate, is it because she's an old lady? Potentially. But like...
No, but it's because they spent the time...
Do you see like that weird mirror?
Yeah, it's like a, really, it's a really massive, it's a cavernous juxtaposition between the two like characters, because Mrs. Cardenas is inconsequential to the Marvel universe, and like realistically, in the harshest way possible, doesn't mean a thing. Natasha Romanoff helps save the fucking universe, and yet, like, when she dies, yes, fine, it's sad, that funeral scene is sad, fine, but Mrs. Cardenas dying, because they spent the time in the smaller moments, and again, like you said earlier, of just normal people doing normal shit, it makes you care about her, and there's like these really endearing conversations. And I think partly it's because again, to bring it back to Foggy Nelson, like, he has no idea what half of these conversations mean because he can only speak Punjabi and not Spanish. But those moments where they're really trying to speak to her on her level and not like forcing her to speak in like broken English all the time. It just creates this lovely dynamic between the whole, like, all of them, which, like you say, does make them this weird little family. So when eventually, and you have that whole moment in the bombing where they take her to hospital, and it really makes the audience actually care about her. When, again, in the grand scheme of things, she doesn't actually mean anything towards the overall plot, technically, even though she's emotional sort of motivation, rather. That's kind of what I mean. I just think it's astounding that they've managed to make you care about somebody who's, not in a mask, not technically the supporting cast of that character, is just a randomer. And it's just, I think it's testament to the show that they can do that and spend the time doing that. Quite often, at least nowadays, you see limited series and straight streaming services, whatever, that rush to get to the spectacle and the costumes and the big explosions, and it's like, this was like, no, you're gonna sit down and listen to this woman talk about how she can't get her apartment fixed. And again, it makes you care about her, and when she dies, it's like, and now here's all the feelings, twist the knife. So well, it's it's the common thread throughout this show of like if we're bringing it down to this level, we're bringing it down to the most human like moments and like flaws and issues and struggles and like tragedies that you're gonna have, because they're always talking about Hell's Kitchen, this is my city, and it's like it does make it feel like a living, breathing thing with people in it that want to that good or bad just have to do stuff to get by. And it's like I say, like for me, Condemned I thought was such a brilliant episode, because like I say, it does sort of set up the limits that Matt will be forced into for season 2 when Frank turns up. But like having turning Vladimir into a guy by the end of it, when he's like, no, the classic sort of thing of a guy of like, no, you go, I'll stay. And he went through shit. He's had to do shit to be where he is. It's not nice. He's not a nice person. It's fucks him up. But like, that's the thing that Fisk talks about a lot, where this city has been infected various, like it's infected everyone, and it's a horrible thing. And I'm just like, yeah, mate, you're the cause. Are we completely not? You're not twigged. But then it's like, he's another character that is so driven by what he thinks is, for him, the right thing to do. And yet it's like, nah, you're actually a piece of shit. But, that's fine, because it means Matt's going to absolutely pummel you by the end of this, hopefully. But again, I think this is what makes Fisk such a great villain and character in his own right, is that like he is absolutely the hero of his own story. And the writers really lean into that. Like, Fisk categorically believes that he is the right thing for the city, and that what he is doing at the end of the day will benefit the city and make it a better place. Now, one would argue that that's a very misguided thought process, Fisk, because, you are working with assassins from the East and, heroin pushers and various other financial fiddlers.
Human traffickers,
etc., etc. But sure, those people are going to make New York better. Okay. But regardless, Fisk still believes that he can benefit New York and Hell's Kitchen. And I just... I feel like we need to spend some time sort of unpacking Fisk a little bit, because that man is complex as fuck.
He a troubled individual.
Got some issues.
Yeah. So this is the first time, mate, where, and I want you absolutely, let's talk about Kingpin. This is the first time, right, I've watched a show or a film or whatever, rewatched, and I've gone, things don't add up with you, mate. And I don't mean Vincent D'Onofrio's performance, incredible. Like, presence, undeniable. Like, he is an absolute menace of this show. For me, though, there are certain details that, like, don't click properly for me that now I've watched it. And one thing that you brought up about the myth surrounding Kingpin, right? I feel like there are inconsistencies there. And I don't know if you'd agree, right? But, for example, like we've said, fucking bowling alley fucking hitman impales himself on a fence post. Sound. This is how scary the man is that he works for. Got it. Why is it then that the Russians aren't that scared of him? That's one thing that makes me go like, huh? Like, like like I've said, you're establishing this guy as this Kaiser Soze presence of Hell's Kitchen of like, we do not say his name, like my employer, da, da, da. And when he finally starts to become exposed, I'm like, one, your security's not that great. For a bloke to just turn up at your dinner and be like, I want a word, I'm like, this guy's literally just killed himself because he said his name, and you've just turned up and invaded his dinner. Like, why are you not on the same wavelength? Is this bad for me to...
No, because I have a similar sort of note. Around the halfway point of the show, it kind of forgets the myth. Yeah. Although you still feel it, and that he's still a scary figure, and he's still, he's still ruthless and all that. It does forget, because he's like just wandering out in public. He's walking around warehouses with like 5 different people around him, and it's like logistically, it's just a bit like, I don't know. I completely agree, because it just, I think what I'm trying to say is it loses steam. Because you've built up this, oh my god, it's so terrifying, and then it just sort of forgets it. And I get the fact that they need to service the dynamic between Fisk and Daredevil. So obviously you need to have Fisk on screen more. So you need to sort of do away with the scary myth of nobody can talk about him or see him or whatever. But I feel like they should have perhaps killed the assassin off in the first episode to then just bring him out in the light sooner to do that. Because otherwise, like you say, it just becomes a bit like, it doesn't add up.
Yeah, it was one thing where I was like, you were selling this so well, and now he's just, like you've said, now he's just wandering about, and I'm just like, this doesn't. And again, like, so can we go in? We're gonna, if it's all right. Now you've mentioned it. Oh God, we've been talking for like 40 minutes. This is incredible. This is gonna be a long one, folks. Strap the fuck in. Oh God.
The heaven section for me, from the top, is obviously the hallway fight. But I don't feel the need for us to pick through that, because I feel like hallway fights in general have been discussed and, dissected over and over again over the years. But obviously it's really fucking cool.
It's dead good.
It's dead good. My second part of the heaven section is the flashbacks with battling Jack Murdoch, because again, considering everything that this show is balancing, it gives the emotional weight of Matt's backstory in such a meaningful way, and you really have that like sort of euphoric moment when he finally wins that the boxing match, and you're just like, oh, he's done it, but then you automatically know that that's not going to end well. So it's this really bittersweet moment where you're like, he's actually managed to do the thing he set out to do, and he's given Matt that little bit of hope and all that, and then he's gonna get shot in an alleyway. But it's just so beautifully done. Battling Jack Murdoch. I also really love the fact that you go from this sweet sort of tender relationship with Matt's dad to then Matt being raised by Stick, played by Scott Glenn,
who's a piece of shit,
who is just an absolute bastard to Matt.
Yeah, just horrible. Just horrible.
Just utterly mean. And he just tells him to grow up every 2 seconds. Like, Matt's like crying on a bench, and he's like, meh, wipe your tears away, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
And then finally, just in general, Wilson fucking Fisk, man. Like, what a villain. Like, although there are inconsistencies with the myth around him, and there's certain elements towards the end that I'm not a fan of, which we'll move on to soon. Like, he is without a doubt one of the best comic book villains of the last decade for me.
Yeah. On screen are we talking about, or just
on screen? On screen. Yeah.
Sorry. No, you're right.
And to be fair, even though it's only briefly, the intro of the comic accurate costume it's pretty fucking cool. So anyway,
just having a little nerdgasm,
just a little one. Onto your heaven section, my good friend.
My heaven section, I'll be honest, mate, it's not looking far off from yours. I mean, it's what we've talked about at length. My heaven section is everyone is perfectly cast. What annoys me particularly with this show, is the amount of brilliant characters that die. And I'm like, fuck, if only there's a way. What if somehow they reveal in Born Again that it is a sequel to the original, but not quite, because that means Ben Urich can come back. And like,
I've just looked at my notes and forgotten the 3 paragraphs I wrote about Ben Urich.
Mate, fucking amazing. Like, so good. Like, their eventual meeting in episode, I want to say episode 9. No, episode 8, I think, where him and Matt finally meet. Well, Daredevil him finally meet. And it's like pissing it down with rain, and they're chatting. I'm like, this is like Batman meeting Gordon. Like, this is that kind of, you know, and it is like reading the comics recently and how Ben is still kicking about and he's still very much alive. And I'm just like, why have you killed him?
I know.
Why did you kill one of us? It's
so
like killing. I wrote down. It's like killing JJ. It's like he is Daredevil's JJ of like Robbie Robertson. It's just annoying of going, you're so good, you back Matt for ages, and it's like, oh no, you're dead. You're dead now. You're dead. Doesn't matter now. And his fucking wife, mate, and God, it's so sad.
God. Yeah, but so is this in your heaven section or your hell section?
No, sorry. This is me talking about how there are so many perfect characters that, like you said, like Ben, Turk, Wesley, as although this will bleed into my hell section eventually. Wesley's great, right? There's one thing that made me pissed the other day, and we will talk about it eventually. But just perfectly cast, like the fucking lychee fucking like, oh, just look at this laptop a second and phone your daughter.
Oh,
you're like,
God.
you piece of shit, you absolute horrible, just knobhead. And again, a character.
I don't think you've ever sounded more British in your life. Oh, you just horrible knobhead.
But he is though, and it's like, but again, it's annoying when you think, fuck, just reboot this somehow, bring him back, and it'd be like, I'll be fine with this. I'll be fine, because Kingpin needs a right hand man, and it doesn't have to be Bullseye, and it doesn't have to be, you know, anyone else. Like, there's going to be various. I don't know. It's like making me think, like, fuck, how good would he have been if he was in Echo? Like, do you get what I mean? Those little just. What would those character interactions have been like if he's just stood in the corner being like, who's this bitch? like who's this new bird that's turned up? I'm your dude. Yeah. What's happening? But yeah, just overall, Rosario Dawson is Claire I will talk about forever. I know, you know, fucking Karen and Matt, and you can ship all that shit all you want, mate, but like their chemistry, I'm just like, just fuck already, just fuck already. And I don't mean it because I'm not perving. I'm just like, it is electric. Like, it's just so good, and she's fucking brilliant. And their episode where she finds him in the dumpster, and he does that amazing bit where he drops the fire extinguisher downstairs.
Oh, that's
fantastic. Still the coolest fucking thing ever. But again, and another part of my heaven section, is the smallest details that aren't his lie detector, that aren't, you know, his listening stuff. It's just little lines where you're just like, where he stitches Claire up and he's like, oh, your fucking stitches are just ripped open. She's like, how do you know? He's like, I smell it in the air. He's just like, what?
It's where she leans over on the table and he's like, you've just popped it.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, her reaction is our reaction, where she's just like, you know, the fire extinguisher bit, I will never forget that. I just think it's such a cool little moment. For me, it's like, it's the equivalent of, I know it sounds really stupid, but like, you know, Captain America, was he not wearing a parachute? No, he wasn't. Like, those are the lines where it's just like, we'll just drop that because that's what he can do, and you're just going to accept it, and it's fucking cool as fuck. But yeah,
it's like the anti version of building up Kingpin's myth. Like, you are just adding to the story that is.
That's exactly
both
right.
Like the alter ego and the ego.
Exactly. And one thing that you've and I keep bringing it up, but like Kaiser Soze, the great thing about Kaiser Soze, no, but hear me out, right? So this was one thing and I was like, fuck, this show needed that. The great thing about The Usual Suspects is the whole story Pete Postlethwaite that fucking Kevin Spacey, Patooey, tells about Kaiser, where he's like, I would rather see my family dead than live my life after this. And he shoots his whole family, right? He tells this whole story about Kaiser Soze and how much of a piece of shit and mentally is. And he was like, he goes into town, he kills their families. You needed that story for Kingpin. Like no one knew where he came from. They say he came from the streets. Other people, because that's one thing. Like we'll go into the whole section, but that I just wanted, like you said, more of the myth. You could have had Matt sat in an interrogation room listening to someone talk about the Kingpin in more detail to really sell how much of a fucking presence this guy is. But yeah,
I think the only I would agree. I was just thinking because like my mind just goes back to Kingpin slamming Vasily's head. Is it Vasily? No, Anatoly. Sorry, slamming Anatoly's head with the car door. Yeah. And you just see in the
car.
Yeah, you just see the sort of like
Wesley's just rocking.
Gloopy bits of viscera and mulch just dripping down from the opposite side of the car. And there's
your vocabulary. There's your motor functions.
There's your 6th birthday. There's your, do you know what I mean? So I think that's the only counterpoint is like at least you do see the savagery side of him kind of early on.
Oh no, absolutely.
But like in this case, would it have been better to tell, not show?
Yes. Yeah.
Like earlier on.
Yeah.
Earlier on,
I
definitely.
Yeah.
But no, I agree. Is there anything else in your heaven section before we move on to the hell section?
That's everything, Your Honour. Please move on to your hell bit. Please.
Well, my first bit is the fact that they fucking killed Ben Urich.
Fucking raging. Fuming.
Honestly, that there isn't... I don't think that there has been a scarier comic book scene than that slow reveal that Kingpin is in the room.
Oh, it's horrible.
Like, yeah. Because it is utterly horrifying because you're like, oh... Like,
Bugger.
There's no way out here, really,
like
is there?
Yeah, like, you're dead. You're dead.
You know, it's like... It's,
you're ever so
you're
dead.
very, very dead. You're dead. You know, it's absolutely chilling the way the camera comes around and he's sat there. You can see him. He's kind of in shadow, but you can see him outright. It's more terrifying than any jump scare. And the more you think about it, that scene, the scarier it gets because you have to think, you know, Ben was already out. So Kingpin has got there, broke in, sat in that chair, waited for Ben to come home. Ben, he's let him unpack. He's settled down.
Oh, it's horrible.
He's grabbed a whiskey. He's sat at his computer and he's about to start writing. Kingpin has been sat there for a long fucking time, waiting to be like, right, I'm going to confront you for finding my mother, and then I'm going to strangle you to death. Like, so although it's the hell section. And I do think it's a brilliant scene. I hate it because they've killed off Ben Urich. And I would love to hear like Ben Urich's take on the Punisher, on Defenders, on Bullseye. Like, I'd want to read a feature about that. I just was like, oh
mate, when
gutted.
When he's reading, when he's typing the draft up about a man needs to somebody needs to be brought out of the dark and like step into the light, and then he fucking turns up on the news and you're. Yeah, and he's reading. Like Fisk is saying things that are pretty much inside his head, and you're just like exactly what you're saying. There, I'm like, fucking hell, this dude can write. Like, no wonder he's got a good job. like you know. And his wife says, she's like, no, you are Ben Urich, reporter, journalist. Like that is who you are. And like you've said, I understand why they did it, but fucking did they have to?
I know.
Like, and just like Karen's right there.
Yeah, but then we would have been annoyed because, like, later down the line.
I know.
But I just think, you know, what a beautifully tortured performance from Vondy Curtis Hall because, like, again, it's kind of like a bittersweet thing of, like, he's one of the best things about this show. Yeah. I just wish he was around for longer. I I think that there were a few little like sort of things that irritated me, but nothing like hugely major. But the biggest thing for me is actually in the final moments of the season, in the fight between Kingpin and Daredevil, when basically, you know, they have this big scrap, you know, Matt's in the suit and it's like, just, you know, he looks like a badass and they're scrapping. And at this point, obviously, Fisk has already decided that if he doesn't make it to the helipad in time, Vanessa's gone. Like, she needs to be safe in another country. And obviously, Daredevil has kind of effectively put a stop to them reuniting. And he's just sort of like, you've taken everything from me.
You took that away from me! You took everything! I'm gonna kill you!
And I was just like, what? Like, come on. We've had a whole season of absolutely terrifying dialogue from Vincent D'Onofrio, who really brings like gravitas to most of these scenes where he's like, you know, practically monologuing to his victims before something happens to them. And then we get, I'm gonna kill you. I just think it's such a waste of a culmination of this, you know, this conflict between these two. You know, you've spent a whole season building up to this, and I'm like, you could have just left it at you've taken Vanessa from me and not had I'm gonna kill you, because it just sounds so cheesy. It sounds like something out of place. It's out of place. It sounds like it should be in the MCU. I'm not saying the MCU's dialogue is quite that bad now, but it would have fit in something like, I don't know, Thor: The Dark World. Or, I don't know, I just felt it really took me out of the moment of what should have been, oh, hell yeah. I was like, like, that could have been better. And I think that whole scene, as cool as it is, I think it would have just been a little bit smoother if that had been the one take of the season instead of the hallway fight. If you'd had the alleyway fight and put that sort of focus on those two, it might have made that fight mean a little bit more. Even though it's cool, you know, I get the focus is on Matt and being in the suit and showing off that he's, you know, he's finally got the billy clubs and all that, but it just felt slightly underwhelming for what should have been like the most important moment of the season in terms of Matt finally like embracing his, you know, alter ego and being able to put Fisk away and actually confront him properly. I just think it was like a bit of a letdown.
No, that's fair, but then would you say that obviously because we know what's ahead, would that be, is this throwdown better or worse than what happens in season 3?
Worse. So
as a result of that, would polishing this one make it therefore better than the third, if that makes sense? Because where I'm coming from, right?
I see what you're saying. If we'd had more focus on this fight and made it a little bit more technically astounding and visually cool and all that stuff, it would have been a really nice bow on a singular season in case you never got any more.
Right.
Obviously we did, and that's fantastic. And
that's really good.
That's really good. Well done. Gold star for you, Drew Goddard. And the season 3 fight is obviously so evocative. It's just
it's peak.
It's peak, as the kids would say.
It is, though, isn't it?
It is. And there is a word that's on the tip of my tongue, and I can't think of it. It's really pissing me off. But you know, it's Matt finally just letting loose. Cathartic. Yes. It's cathartic. There we go. Of seeing him just being like, "I've beat you. I've done. You know, you are out. You are over."
Yeah.
Whereas I kind of feel like that potentially should have come through more in this fight a little bit. So it's maybe not a case of like comparing the two, but I just think for this story, it was just like now we're gonna have a quick fisticuffs and then you're going to prison, bad boy. It was like it was like you're trying to wrap up a little bit, you know,
yes, that famous Daredevil quote.
You're going to prison, bad boy.
You're going to prison, bad boy.
No, but like I just think it should have carried more weight. So yeah, I think that's it for my health section. You can carry on. I've rambled enough.
Fair. No, that's fine. I shall address the bench. My biggest gripe with this show, which I adore, right, is the piss-soaked yellow fucking tint that is throughout it, right? Is Hell's Kitchen conveniently located next to fucking film industry Mexico? Because why is everything yellow? Like, I get it, right? It's the criminal underbelly of the fucking city. Hell's Kitchen's a fucking absolute shit tip of a place. Why is it always yellow? Like, you know, we talked last week, and I was trying to find like the correlations and I was, you know, trying to figure out, without doing any research, because obviously, why would I? You fucking novice. Idiot. But like, we talked about last week how through season 2, Frank Castle is a walking bruise and gradually becomes even more yellow, right? And I was like, okay, Hell's Kitchen is bruised, it's damaged, that's why it's all dirty. But I was like, yellow's just such an icky colour to me, particularly how when it's lit, when anyone's in an abandoned warehouse or in a hallway, or it's past fucking 7 o'clock on a Tuesday night, it's always yellow. And it just wound me up a bit. I was like, I get it. There are other colours. Like, I don't know why, but it just really irks me. I'm probably alone in this, but yeah.
No, I get what you're saying. It's like every time they're, by the docks, it's yellow. It's there's the odd moment where they embrace colour a bit more. There's a really beautiful moment where Matt's talking about his apartment and he's like, I got a really good deal for a very good reason. And you see this neon
gorgeous,
and it comes through and there's like with the rain and stuff and it just builds this really tender moment. And like you say, considering the rest of the show is yellow or very just like stark lighting, it's really strange.
Yeah.
I feel like they could have done with more colour. I completely agree.
Yeah, so that's one thing that pissed me reet off. As much as we've talked about small characters doing big things and being impactful with little things, right? And there was a point, you're looking at probably episodes 5 to 7 or 4 to 7, where I'm like, Foggy and Karen are doing fuck all in this dim wedding. like let's sit, like we've said, let's do a bar crawl on fucking absolutely with no money. Let's fucking talk about a fax machine. I'm like, come on guys, it's 2015. Like, what are you playing at? Interview more people, speak to criminals. I don't know. I was just like, I get it, Foggy mate, you're in the friend zone. Nothing's gonna come of this, but like, just do something. It just really, it I think it just it gets a bit long in the tooth. I was just like, this is wearing thin here. But that was a minor thing. And what I've talked about, and I was alluding to previously, is just the inconsistency of Kingpin's myth. But not only that, the episode where I can't remember what it's called. Basically, the episode, the flashback where you find out he killed his dad. Right? The what's it called? Shadows in the mirror.
Shadows in the glass.
Shadows in the mirror. Shadows in the glass. Sorry, my mistake. Yeah. Shadows in the glass. Like, great episode. But what frustrates me is like anyone that's read comics, right, and knows about Kingpin. Dude fucking went to Japan. Like, is very well educated. Like, studied fucking sumo as a fighting style. Knows how to handle himself. Believed that the strength and power are obviously the way to go in terms of getting places. Where was that eureka moment in this? I get it. You snapped when you killed your dad, right? Perfectly fine. And your mum's like, get the saw. You're like, wow, this is the thing that will unite us forever in a horrific dark secret.
But then there's the gap, isn't there?
And I was like, there's just a gap. And I'm just like, you're speaking to fucking Madame Gao in like Mandarin. You're speaking to Nobu in Japanese. I'm like, I want Kingpin's Batman Begins. When did he meet Wesley? Him and Wesley are tight as fuck. When did they meet? When did he go, you're a devious bastard, you can come work for me? Like, it was just that, because I was like, you've spent so much time working on Matt and explaining where he came from, and ultimately we know that origin story really quite a bit, not as well as fucking we haven't seen Jack die 4 times like we've seen Uncle Ben, but like, it just frustrated me where I was like, I want to see you in this flashback. You are shaking like a shitting dog for most of it, and then you snap. What happens after that?
Yeah.
Because this is like you said. You compared it to Penguin. This is like Penguin's flashback of, my brother's down in the fucking sewer and they're not coming back up for a while. Like, that explained so much. But the reason for that was the why that got a pass, I think, is because we knew Oz wasn't as educated, wasn't, wanted power, but wasn't really.
You didn't really need.
He was street smart.
Yeah. So it was feasible that he could just become a gangster.
Yeah.
Whereas Kingpin, there's too many dots to connect to be like, how can you do this?
So many.
Yeah. I would love to know. I would love to actually have seen him blackmailing Melvin Potter, for example. I know you hear about it a little bit where he's like, oh, Betsy. But it's just those little things. Like you say, Wesley would be really cool to actually figure out. He calls him his friend, and it's like, all right, but what do you actually have in common aside from, like, being complicit in murder?
Yeah.
Like, what is it about you two that you get? Like, why do you get along? Like, do you go for a beer? Do you, like, have a pint? Like,
exactly.
What's the... Stuff like that. It'd be really interesting to know what else makes him tick and not just, hey, I killed me dad. And while we're on that subject, I did also spot, there's the really, like, kind of haunting visual thing of where he sees his, like, kid self in the mirror and the. Why did they not do that throughout?
Yes. Yeah.
Because if you'd seen that in more scenes, you'd have been like, oh, this guy is actually really tortured. What the fuck?
Yeah.
And you only see it, like, I think maybe 3 times at a push.
Yeah.
If that.
Yeah.
If they'd have done that throughout, you'd have been like, oh, God, that's creepy.
Well, that goes back to, we talked about tell, don't show. This could be show, don't tell. You would, like you said, like those are the nuggets that would have amplified the myth of going, this is how, I hate, one thing I fucking hate in certain sort of genres, particularly like horror and stuff, is like, let's give the villain a backstory. And it's like, no, he's a fucking murderer and a monster and he's unkillable or whatever. Like, I don't give a shit, there's just certain, like, trying to sort of add backstory to Michael Myers. No, he's just a fucking shape. That's all he is. But, like, with Fisk, it's like you said, it could have been, we've spent, these two are the same, are two sides of the same coin, right? We've spent so much time with one side. Let's look at the other one as well. And like you've said, he's the hero of his own story. Why? Like, even if he fucking caves his dad's head in, and his mum goes, "I'll get the saw." Like, get the saw.
Stop! He's already dead.
And he's still pretty rocked. Why didn't he say it? If he'd have said it, you'd been like, "Oh, this fucking hell!" Like,
yeah.
I don't know. It just wound me up a bit. I was just like, there's not enough myth behind this man, and it just wound me up a bit. Don't get me wrong. Like, we're not going to take away Vincent D'Onofrio is fucking incredible, but it just wound me up a bit. That, like, and there's one bit. So I was speaking about Wesley, right, and that did make me piss because of this having this in my head. Madame Gao comes to see. It is Madame Gao, isn't it? Madame Gao?
It is Madame Gao, yeah.
Yeah. She goes to meet Fisk at his house, and she's, like, chatting away. Wesley's translating, and then she's like, he can understand me. And then she's like, and then it's like, Wesley's like, well, fuck me then. What have I been doing for the past? I've been working for you for months.
How many conversations have I translated for nothing?
For no reason. I'm pissed off that she could speak English. I'm more pissed off that you could understand her. This is a joke. Get HR on the phone. This is a fiasco. But, like, it just annoyed me where I was like, when did you learn that? When did you learn Japanese? Like, when did you become the businessman / murderer? Because you were just a pussy. Like, your dad was like, your dad's like, kick him. You're like, right. He's not even... You know what annoyed me? One thing I was like, oh, this would have been cool. If Fisk, the angrier he got, if he'd have slipped back into that low-level New York neighborhood kid. Because there's no through line between the two, and it just wound me up. Matt, you can see child Matt and grown-up Matt you can see that line without question.
I guess there's
nothing.
The only thing I would say to that is like the rage that comes out in Kingpin. So, for example, like like when you see the kid Kingpin like caving in the dad, he starts screaming, and what's quite a common theme with adult Kingpin is the scream. He can't stop himself from like verbally like it's almost like he's verbally expelling his anger because he has, aside from like using violence, has no other way of expressing that. What I do find interesting, and this is kind of now just going back to the Kingpin show, is that like the myth starts out so strong and Kingpin starts so strong, as soon as he falls for Vanessa, all of that just goes out the window because he's like,
I
love you.
But at the same time, like I do love their chemistry is brilliant. But I do even like her. There's like a weird bit where like when she goes to the restaurant and he's blown up all the places. There was no. I understand she's not supposed to be shocked. She's shocked, but she's not. She's like, God, this guy's so hot. It's like, oh my God, I love a guy who blows up a drug factory for me.
Talk about that,
but you know what I mean? It was, I know, right? Oh God, she's got some guys hold doors over me. Some guys use arson. I'm so torn. But like their relationship's great, but it's like you say, it just annoyed me that he becomes like, I didn't want anyone you to see me like this. I'm like, man, just stop being a pussy. Like you're not slipping back to the child Fisk. You're just being a bit awkward. You're socially awkward by one. I don't know. It just, but he gets better, and that's the only thing I can take away from it. The further it gets away from this, the better D'Onofrio becomes. Do you know what I mean? Like it was just that one thing where I was like, I would have loved to see more. I would have loved to see more of that.
I think as well, because like we say, it starts out so interesting. He's such a complex, layered character that you're like, I just want to know everything about you. Like early on, you have the whole rabbit in a snowstorm thing with the painting, which is one of the reasons that he ends up falling for her in the first place, because of this bloody painting that is just, somebody's just got a bit of cream paint and gone... But what I thought was interesting, like even that, it's like, what is a rabbit in a snowstorm? It's a white animal hidden by its surroundings, which is what Kingpin is in New York. Like, and again, just adds to that myth. And then it goes, if you look at that and how many layers there is to that, to the end fight of,
I'm gonna kill you!
It's just like, it very, very tonally... Or not all over the place. That feels a bit too harsh, but it's just...
No, I get you. It's just they like you said. It goes from art gallery to bathroom wall. Like it's just, But yeah, those are my only issues.
Okay, I mean, as comic book shows go, not some bad issues, you know.
Yeah. Oh, don't get me wrong. That's it. That's your lot. It's still a banger. It's still great, and like, again, you watch this and go, "Fuck me, Born Again's got a lot to live up to."
Yeah, I think
like so much.
The more I think about Born Again, the more worried I get. Admittedly,
really,
yeah, a little bit, because so season 1 had 13 episodes, right, and they achieved a lot with 13 episodes. They spent a lot of time with a variety of characters and, you know, looking at what makes them tick and their backstories, you know, whether that was done well, you know, is obviously up for debate, which we have spent over an hour doing. But Born Again has 9 episodes and a shit ton more characters, which to me is worrying. Because, you know, you've got Matt, Foggy, Karen, Kingpin, Bullseye. Then new characters, you've got Muse, White Tiger. You've also got people like Cole North, who, if you are a fan of the comics, is related to the Devil's Reign arc, which is when Fisk becomes mayor. So it's all coming full circle.
It's all kicking off.
You've also got characters who I noticed as BB Uric.
Oh.
So again, like, you've got a lot of things and a lot of arcs to like explain and introduce, and I'm just like, oh, this is all quite a lot. And you've got the task of bringing it back anyway and setting it like firmly in the MCU, because we've not really talked about the adjacent side of things.
I think that's neither the heaven or hell. It just is. It's just a thing, innit?
Yeah. It's just a weird thing. But yeah, so just on the Born Again front, like, obviously I'm very, very excited, but I'm just a little bit concerned that they may have tried to cram in too much. If they'd have saved somebody like Bullseye for like the second half, maybe that is what they're doing, and maybe he's just in the trailer because he's in the final episode or whatever. It's just like, okay, you've not got as much time, and you seem to have more big players to thoroughly give enough screen time to. So we'll see.
I think also it's not going off the reputation of the Netflix show; it's going off the reputation of the MCU. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in the current track record of MCU shows has been up and down, down.
Yeah.
And it's like, because you sort of go. Basically, what I'm saying is, it's not in Netflix's hands anymore. It's in Marvel's, and is that better or worse? Yeah,
I mean, the fact that they've confirmed that it's going to be an 18, and I put a post up on our social media about this the other day, is a good thing, because then it means that it can be consistent with the Netflix shows. But equally, the show needs to have enough depth in its storytelling to match that. Otherwise, it's just going to be violence for the sake of violence, and that's not what makes me enjoy Daredevil so much. I enjoy Daredevil for as much as the violence and the superheroics as I do about the in-depth storytelling and why these characters are so endearing. It's Matt's Catholic guilt, it's Karen's determination, it's the lovability of Foggy, and if that's only in there as like we have to do this because it's obligatory, it's not going to work as well. So we'll see.
We can only hope and pray, just as Matt would do. I think, Mr. Eammon, that's where we should leave it. Do you concur?
I do concur.
He's got all this to edit. Folks, if you want to find us, you can do. You can find us at Eammon.
You can find us at DaredevilCast on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and YouTube. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, every podcast provider you can think of, we are on it. So subscribe, leave a rating, leave a comment. If you have any questions, you can let us know. We even have an email address if you want to email us at daredevilcast@outlook.com. Send us a comment, we'll read it out, we'll answer a question.
To be fair, we did get a really nice comment this week from last week's episode, so we appreciate that. Where was that? Was that on TikTok?
That was on TikTok. Let me just pull it up quickly. So this is from Frankie Doodles CS on TikTok. He basically just sort of said that he enjoyed the show, which was really nice, but he especially liked the part where he spoke about Matt and Kingpin and how you mentioned the meanings between their hands above and below the desk. Thought that was very interesting.
If only we talked about Kingpin more this week.
I know, right?
Sorry, mate.
In terms of Daredevil Born Again, he's also really excited to have like Punisher and Kingpin and Bullseye back. He just hopes that the pacing is right and that it doesn't feel like the spotlight is being taken from anyone. Either way, I'm just excited to have more Daredevil content to watch. Us too, Frankie Doodles, us too.
And we are getting ever so closer to it, and we're getting dead excited. Not quite horny, but a little bit excited. From there, with Eammon's current facepalm, that's where we'll leave it. I've been Nick Stanleyforth. You've been
Eammon Jacobs.
And remember, folks, sometimes even when you get knocked down, you can still get up. Bye.
I hate you.
I'm Daredevil. Not even God can stop that now.